I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. You have some seriously heartfelt moments. You have regrets. You have vulnerability. You have lies, secret, vengeance. Hi wonderful people, and welcome back to my channel, Book Craves. I'm Giselle. What's up? How are you going? What's the scene? If it's your first time here, we talk about romance books. So today, I am going to share with you what I actually read in April. I actually had to go back to my Goodreads account to see what I actually read in April, and I was surprised that I read 20 books. And I read quite a vast array of books. Like, I had some taboo reads, I had some interracial reads, I had one mafia, I had a young adult in there, new adult in there. So if you want to know what I read, then keep watching. If you have not read this book, then I highly recommend that you go pick up this book. Now, this is not a recommendation video, but when I read this book, by the time I was done, I was so hyped. So the book that I am talking about is Homewrecker by Zenny Daye. Now, it was totally not what I expected, and I appreciate that. Yes, there was a little homewrecking happening, but in this book we meet Cody and Rebecca. Cody, he wants to get in the ring and take down someone who is very high up in the MMA lifestyle, in the MMA fighting ring, championship, whatever. And he does things that would get him in that ring or would get him in that cage with this individual. However, it always backfires. So he decides to do something to bring him down, and it turns out it was exactly what Rebecca needed, because she's that individual's wife. And let me just say, the fighting scenes in this book, it is very detailed. You get to follow along. Listen, the flow of the story is so good. You have issues with unfaithfulness, you have issues with child rearing, you have issues with mental health, you have issues with learning disability, you have issues with drug use. There is so much in this book, and it all wraps up into a fantastic story. You need to read this book. You need to pick up this book and read it. I appreciate MMA romances so much more, MMA theme romances so much more, because I read this book. Listen, I thought I was an MMA fighter when I was done reading this book. Like, I kid you not. Giselle was, you know, on the ball of her toes, bouncing around. There was this particular scene in this book that I was shouting and yelling, and I was so happy. I became so engrossed into the character. I'm like, Cody, yes, knock him out, Cody. I swear I was watching a match live on TV. It was so good, y'all. Read this book. This was one of my top 5 books that I read in April. This Woven Kingdom is another good book. This is a fantasy book. This was one of the books that I wanted to read this year. It was on my list, and I've read it, and I love it, but it ended on a cliffhanger, which I wasn't expecting. So now I have to read part 2. The author did a phenomenal job creating this world, creating the scenes, creating the characters. Listen, the storyline, first of all, this is a forbidden romance. So you have 2 or 3 different sets of races of different people, and you have one kingdom ruling over the other. This story follows Cameron and Alize. Alize, she's a djinn, and Cameron, he's the prince, and he's next in line to rule, to be king. And so this girl, her both parents were killed, and she was living the life of a servant. She would keep her face covered because her features would give her away, and she would be put to immediate death. Someone discovers her, who happened to be the prince, and he became so intrigued with her, and then he slowly discovered her story. This story, it is a slow build. There's nothing steamy about this book. The story in itself, the plot carries this book. And normally I don't become too engrossed in stories that have no steam to it, But this one, you need to read this one. This is in my top 5. And how the story ended, I was like, no. I'm like, this author could not be doing this to me right now. She could not, but she did anyway. So I have to wait for book 2 to be released. This book has like 40 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, about 40 chapters. It is very long. It is a very thick book, but it was so worth it. Next, this one, Fear Me by Amarie Avant. Oh my gosh, so this is part 2 in a duet. So I spoke about part 1 already with Tahereh and River. This is their conclusion, and it was on point. Listen, this book had so much feel in it. You have some seriously heartfelt moments. You have regrets. You have vulnerability. You have lies, secret, vengeance. It does have some triggers for individual because Tahereh, the heroine, she did go through something as a child, and so this was her way in dealing with it as an adult and facing that individual and just telling persons what she went through. You had people willing to help her that died. You had a River facing his dad, and you also have this heartfelt reunion between River and his mom because he was fed lies by his dad. Oh my gosh, listen. And River is an MMA fighter, just saying. So this is an MMA interracial romance. Just thought I should share that. Good God, this book, this is another book that I gave 5 stars to. This is a high school bully romance, and this is one of the best high school bully romance that I have read. This, y'all, this enemies to lovers. So in this book we meet Aiden and Kalani, and Kalani, her brother is involved in a gang and he passes away. And Kalani, she's very intelligent. Her brother helped to support her and her mother. And now that he's gone, she wants to be able to pull her own weight. She happens to get a scholarship because she's living on the wrong side of the tracks. And she gets a scholarship to a very prestigious academy. So she goes there and she's being bullied. She doesn't know why. And it so happens that she reaches her breaking point. And she reaches out to her brother's friend who is part of the gang and who is ruling the gang. So the gang member reaches out to Aiden because Aiden goes to the school and asks him, hey, Kalani's being bullied. She's this one brother. Can you, do something about it? Happens that Aiden was the one who was bullying her. And so he discovers who Kalani really is. But by then he had already started to develop feelings. All right, so we had that. But then we had this jaw-dropping reveal. Kalani's father is part of a cartel. And Aiden and his friends, their parents, are part of a cartel. And they are warring. Listen, Kalani's almost murdered by her stepbrother. Let me stop talking about this book. But this is one you have to read. This one, Hidden Scars. Hidden Scars. Oh my gosh, I got so excited I didn't even tell you the name of the book. This one you need to read too. 5 stars again. 5 stars again. I told you I had a really good month. So, Sins of the Orchid. First time reading a book by this author. And it is phenomenal. Sins of the Orchid. So this is my one and only mafia romance that I read this month. It is a brother's best friend romance. So it so happens that Amarie, she's the only daughter of a crime family. She was raised with her mother. Her father did not know that she existed until her mother was murdered by a Colombia cartel. So she's taken to the big city, to the Big Apple, and so she has to adjust to her new life. She gets lost to be found by another crime family. And she's best friends with Adriano. They'll get into trouble and whatnot. But she always had a crush on his older brother, who is next in line to be the head of the Rosales family. She finds out that her grandmother is the head of a particular cartel, and she's next in line to rule the cartel, and whoever she marries will obviously get more power. And her father did the unthinkable by arranging a marriage between her and Adriano. She wants nothing to do with Adriano because she likes his older brother, Santino. This book, yo, this book, it had so many twists and turns. This age gap romance was on point because you felt the tension crackling between Amor and Santino. You felt that underlying tension between them, and the plot in the story, because you had someone wanting revenge. Listen, this book, Sins of the Orchid, read it, okay? Read it if you're looking for a mafia age gap romance with a forced arranged marriage that never happened because Santino wasn't going to let that go down. So okay, just read it. I binged read some books from QB Tyler. I have been wanting to read her books, and I'm just saying some recommendations is going to come from me regarding this lady. Every single book that I read from her was a forbidden romance, right? Let's begin there. So the first one that I read was Always Been You. This one is a step-sibling romance. So we had Gabrielle, who was adopted by James' family, and there's roughly like around an 8 to 9 year age gap between Gabrielle and James. They both felt something, but Gabrielle, she felt something as a teenager for her older step-brother. All right? Taboo. Then I read My Best Friend's Sister. You already know how that is going to swing with Ava and Jackson. Ava and Jackson, they grew up in a small town. Jackson left to go to the big city. He made it big, doing some app development. And so Ava, she came also to the big city to study law at university. And so Jackson's best friend wanted him to look out for her, which he did eventually, but not initially. And things just led from one thing to another. Yo, good God. The brother happened to walk in on them in a very awkward situation. I also read Bittersweet Surrender and Bittersweet Addiction. And this is from the Bittersweet Duet. This had a whole love triangle. Told you every single book that I read thus far from her is taboo, is forbidden. And in this one, you have Charlotte, Matt, and Will. Charlotte and Matt are married and they're having issues in their marriage. And so they decide to go to a marriage counselor who is Will. Will starts to have some feelings or develop some feelings towards Charlotte, and Charlotte returns them. And so they embark on this affair. Turns out everything that is in the dark, it comes to light. That's just the way Carmen is. It was very messy, which is what you would expect given that the husband found out. But I didn't really feel too bad because of Matt and Charlotte's relationship and their marriage. I finally read the final book from the Hellfire series. And the name of this book, it is Sweet Devil. Tell me, why did I take so long to read this book? I read books 1 to 4 last year, and this was the story I was waiting for. Sarafina, she's like the queen of that prep school. She's like the queen. She's the big shot. And Rice, he lost his mom to cancer, and then he was diagnosed with something, and he has been keeping this a secret from all his best friends as well as from her. Listen, these are the two that were warring each other. This is also an enemies to lovers as well. I thought that I would love it more. I thought that I would like it more. Out of the 5 books, it is not my least favorite, but it's not my favorite. Brutal Bloodline, that's my favorite out of all 5 of the Hellfire Club series by Becca Gray. I read His Rule by A. Zavarelli and Natasha Knight, and this was my worst read for the month. Yeah, this was my worst read for the month, and I'm so surprised that I didn't like this book at all. There was nothing about this book. It was, for me, it was a very big disappointment. I gave it 2 stars. So this book, it is part of the Society series, and I have read books with the same society, and I absolutely loved it. I'll put up the one that I read that I loved. I gave 5 stars to that one. But this one, their story was just like pointless. I felt as though the storyline was lost, and I don't understand what the plot was, to be honest, because it's just like Mercedes misbehaving and Judge coming to correct her, right? I didn't feel any tension between them. I wasn't very intrigued by this story at all. There was nothing that fascinated me, and overall I was just like disappointed because there was no twist, there was no turn, there was no surprises. It was just like flat. That's what the plot and the storyline fell flat for me. So I read the final 2 books in the 7 night. So I read the Viking and the Antichrist. The Antichrist released more to the beginning of April, and Viking released like mid-April. The Antichrist is by far the darkest book in the series. Like it was dark. There were gruesome scenes, there were things with a lot of triggers, there was a lot of like self-hate, you had like secret society. To me, it was more than your regular MC romance, which I enjoyed. In this book, we meet Marika and Nico. And Nico, his family are part of the MC, and Mariki, her parents died and she's living with her aunt. They grew up together, and Nico and her just had this tug of war. You push, I pull, you pull, I push, you know, kind of relationship growing up. And so they were just like circling around each other. And then he got enrolled into this kind of secret society where he became the ghost. And in becoming the ghost, he had to sever all ties from his past life. And so Mariki, when she was left alone, she became friends or involved with someone who abused her and who manipulated her into doing things. There was this cult that they were just literally breeding women to take their child and ship them off to an island. They were just being raped by her abuser, being impregnated by her abuser, and there was nothing that she can do. It is kind of confusing, but you literally have to read this book. And the ending, there was this ending that left me confused though. It really left me confused. And so in Viking is where you get to hear more about the island and the children that they shipped to the island. On that island, you have a cult, and on that cult, you have these men that are abusing these women, brainwashing them into doing things, brainwashing them into thinking this is the way of life, and that if they go out or if they try to run away, they will die. And so the heroine, she married the head of this cult, and so she stabbed him and she runs away. And there she meets Viking, who was searching for this society so he could take them down. The final 2 books of this particular series were much more connected than the previous books in the series, and These are my favorite from this entire 7 Nights MC series. I don't know which one I like more. Viking, the storyline was way easier to follow. In Antichrist, you had to go back and forth between the past and the present and then the secret society. I'm like, yo, this is just an MC romance. Why we had to go all secret society, touch mafia, come back to MC life? It was just like, it was too much. There was a lot going on in the Antichrist, so I kind of prefer Viking more. Both of them got the same rating, 4 stars, because I liked both of them, but I like Viking more. And if I would recommend a book to read, I would recommend Viking more as opposed to the Antichrist. I read the 4 books in the Wolves of New York by Bella Jacobs. So they were Wolf King, Wolf Pawn, Wolf Queen, and Wolf Mate. And it follows the same characters from this series. It is a shifter romance, but it is, the blurb mentions like mafia. To me, it had nothing mafia about it. It was strictly a shifter romance, but like very much more futuristic. So you have the heroine. She is very much shunned in her pack. And so on some particular night when they are paired off with their mates, she's paired off with the alpha's son, who is very abusive, very disrespectful. She cannot stand him. She wants nothing to do with him, and he almost rapes her. She gets out of that situation and she jumps into this river that takes us somewhere else, and she's hoping that this particular person, the hero, can help her because their pack has a lot of influence, have a lot of strength, and have a lot of weight. They carry a lot of weight in terms of that whole shifter world. The author, she did a good job in terms of like describing the shifter world, and it had me quite intrigued to see where the story would go. Not just the romance in it, but the world that she created, to me, was very interesting because I've never read like a shifter romance like this. It's almost like a parallel dimension. So she goes to this parallel dimension and she gets the help by telling lies, and it so happened that her sister played them, his brother played them. Like, there was a lot of mystery, a lot of twists and turns in this book that I didn't really expect, but it had me hooked because I wanted to know what happened next. You know, normally it's 4 books, but sometimes by the time you reach that 2nd book, going into that 3rd book, it's like, yo, I'm tired, I don't want to read no more. But with this particular shifter romance, it actually kept my interest, and I just needed to know how things would work out. So this one was really good, but this is more like, for me, a 3-star read, yeah. So I read the 2nd book in the Darling Hill Duet, and this is by Ellie Cotton. So I read book 1, These Dirty Lies, and that was like an okay, that was more like a 3-star. But then I read These Dirty Promises, and I'm like, oh my god, I liked this one so much better, much more than the 1st book. In this book, the story still follows Phoenix and Haley, and after Haley like discovers what her dad did and all of that from book 1, they want to keep their relationship a secret. Turns out that the brother, or Haley's younger brother, or stepbrother, finds out about them and wants to blackmail her. It so happens that he wants to be trained like to fight, like to box, because that's what Phoenix does. He wants to like train with Phoenix and all of that. And so they become really good friends, and Max actually starts to cover for her. But it's not that. It is not that. Like in this book, you have Phoenix dealing with an abusive dad. You have Haley dealing with a dad that she thought did not care about her, only to find out that it was her mom that didn't want anything to do with the dad, and a stepmom that hated her so much. But this story was really nice. It was very unexpected, and I really enjoyed it. I needed to know what was going to happen between Phoenix and Haley, especially with her dad, her stepmom, his abusive dad and his stepmom that refused to leave an abusive relationship. So they had so many things going on with them in their own personal life. This was the last book that I read this month, The Wrong Mate by Jade Marshall. In this book, we meet like Max and Rain. And Rain, she's not originally from that pack, but something happened with her dad, and her brother and her mom came to live with that pack. And then you have Max, who initially challenged the alpha to rule, but he wasn't successful. So he's like the beta. And so he's in denial that Rain is his mate, and he is fighting it, and his wolf is not having it. And so eventually he gives in because his wolf takes control, especially when she's in danger. That's it. I wouldn't say it was the wrong mate. It's just that he was in denial. He didn't want someone that was so much younger than him to be his mate. He didn't want someone that was so untouched by the evil in this world to be his mate. The story was good. I enjoyed the story though. The writing and everything was good. It was just too short for me. I wish there was like more story development, but that's all I got. That's all she wrote. So if you enjoyed any of these books, comment down below. If you read them, comment down below. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, what are you waiting on? Like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you would know when I post a video, and look out until I post another one. Bye.